Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone it is, whether you in the world. It is your Lore Saviour with a very different sort of format for a regular Lore by Night podcast episode and some shoddy lighting from our big G in the sky, so we're going to have to tolerate with that, unfortunately. Now, in the previous episode of the Lore by Night podcast, we had a look at cults in Vampire the Masquerade, specifically how they're presented in Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition's Cult of the Blood Gods, which of course you can take and apply to any bit of media, such as Midnight Mass, which is a case study that we used and how basically that cult revolves around how it presents fascism, religion, cults and all the other bits and pieces but that I talked about in that episode. So you should go and watch that straight away because I think that's a rather banning episode. We are now today going to be talking about the creating of a cult and what I may do when I am going to run a Vampire the Masquerade game for my players, or if I would run a game I should say. This isn't an actual player or anything, or a campaign diary. This is me going to be basically improvising and coming up with ideas on the fly, so we have a bit of a conversation about it, because I feel it will be a bit more natural rather than me preparing something in advance and then explaining to you my thought processes as it happened rather than as it is happening, because I think that would be far more beneficial to you, the budding storyteller and players who want to experience some cults in your games, because I get asked quite a bit about creating and running games in Vampire, and I've done videos, more general videos in the past about this, but this is the first time that we've properly addressed like creating a chronicle on the fly, specifically talking about cults. Now, despite everything we talked about in the previous episode, I do think that a lot of people are going to enter this thinking that cults revolve around religious fronts, and it's actually something that Cult of the Blood Gods does quite a lot as well, and its other source books as well, Trails of Ash and Blood, Forbidden Religions and Children of the Blood, and Chicago by Night source books as well for 5th edition. They do that to an extent, but they're more teasing what's going to come in these books. And I think it's very important that if you want something to create something that's cool and unique, you should subvert players' expectations. And I think that goes with a lot of game design in general, in my opinion, for somebody who's run a lot of games and obviously designed a lot of one-shots primarily and a Chronicle here and there. So when we have this cult idea, what I would do, I wouldn't so much connect it to religion or Methuselah or some other sort of blood god as 5th edition likes to revolve around. I'm in the mood of doing something that's more obviously around a community of people and rules and upholding all those, but I think having it around more a community of people. Like, I've just finished watching Midnight Mass for the second time in preparation for these two videos, and I found it interesting that even though you have a mayor and his wife, that clearly, oh, these two are the one in charge. No, it's more the religious front here. It becomes about Pruitt and Beth and their, like, subversions of fate, to rule with their own agendas in mind, some more noble than others, you could argue. I would want to do a little twist on that, so there would be some religious influence for sure, but I would also have it like whoever's calling the shots, like the mayor, be the one in charge. They'll be the one that's being manipulated here by a vampire. Rather than not having something that's too powerful, I think like something that obviously has enough strength for some level of dominance, or like an Ancilla, or like a young elder, but not like Methuselah level, like Portia sort of thing, trying to work out who or what the different layers of that would be. So obviously our prophet here would be the one that's like the mayor of this town, man, woman, or somewhere in between. They may well have a partner who may be like the more enforcer of that. Again, I'm taking inspiration from Midnight Mass because that's fresh on my mind, but I do think it's important to have like the balance of that sorted. You have someone who preaches it and you have somebody that lays down the hand, and when somebody is laying down the hand, that prophet is the one reciting all that religious revere and gobbledygook, as it were. But in a more legal sense here, it would be this person would be serving as a judge, police officer, or whatever. Or it could be like corrupt police or judges or whatever, or lawyers, and to really screw people over. And as I said, I would want to subvert expectations here. So players would arrive onto the scene because the best way to experience a cult is from the outside perspective, so players can see just how messed up things are. Because you could do a scenario like this where people who've grown up as kids or whatever, and obviously they're playing vampires, they would be embraced into it, but that wouldn't have so much of the same punch, because now there are elevated to a higher plane of calling, as it were, which could work, but that's not the sort of story I'm wanting to tell here. And of course, this isn't accounting for the players who may belong to a separate cult where ideologies may differ, which would obviously create some very interesting spice, and thus the storyteller and player would have to do a bit of extra legwork to make that work as well as possible. Of course, it would cause a lot of conflict as well, as often conflicting ideas do with the human race. Unfortunately, we're not very good at agreeing to disagree, as it were. With this idea, we'd obviously want to introduce the players into the cult, so from the outsiders coming in. And I would have that quite literally. This would be obviously being a detached community. I'm thinking like a backwater sort of thing, so like trees and whatnot around, like a lake. That sort of thing. So it's isolated, it's cut off, like you can drive through it easily and like miss it sort of thing. Again, it's cut off from society and cities, so players have to be a bit more cautious about feeding, manipulating who and what they can, because everybody's going to be around and like eyes peeling and watching these strangers in town. And obviously, to start off a chronicle like this, it would involve the prince or baron like sending the players there for one reason or another. And I think the easiest way to do this is actually an idea that's covered in one of the Chicago books, and Trails of Ash and Blood, where the prince is sent them off to go and retrieve someone, to go and look for somebody, and then all this cult stuff happens. So it's hardly original, but it doesn't have to be, just to get the ball rolling sort of thing, because the main beef is actually interacting with the cult here, and all the bits and pieces that make that tick. So the idea that I'm brewing at the moment, that the prince is asked to go and the coterie to go and find a person of interest. Now, whether that's someone who has broken the law, somebody who was supposed to be arriving to go and check up on them, like they've sent a text message, they're going to be late or whatever, that was so many days ago, there's so many different ways that you can do this, but the idea is to get the players out of the comfort of their city and into the wild, as it were. So it may actually be worthwhile having a session or two prior to that, like having some like little one-shot adventures within this chronicle, so when they have that meeting with the prince, they're beginning to feel a bit accustomed, and then you just take away the safety. Like, that to me is where a lot of the horror with Vampire comes in, and running these sorts of games where you give them a little bit, you make sure that they feel a bit safe, they're a bit in control, and you take away bit by bit, and then just pull the rug from when they're not expecting it. That pulling of the rug being when the cult starts to really investigate the players, which in this case would be the whole town community. The players would arrive, and they're driving around in a car. Now, a lot of ideas in games would have, X person is in the place where the cult is hiding out, which is fine, but we're going to make this a bit more spicy. We could have like a car chase, or like some Anarchs or Guru or whatever, like intercept here, or it could just be as simple that the car breaks down, or you have them to drive along, to notice things like it's in the middle of the night, it's dark, they can't really see where they're going, even with like their headlights going on, and if they don't get that number of successes, they could like hit like a pot in the hole in the road or something, like, and just take something out. The players go and investigate, it's like, oh great, the car's bust down, we can't get anywhere. Then you have somebody from the community enter. The idea that I have, as we're wanting to subvert expectations, want to set up the idea that it may be religious, but it's not. So it could be like a priest who's out and about in the middle of nowhere, who's like doing a sermon to an old person who lives in a caravan, just waffling here, who may be a bit distant from the community for one reason or another. It could be how the town's run, it could be like the death of somebody, it could be a whole host of different reasons, but something ostracizes them from the community, and their bad fruit spoiling the bunch, as it were. But this priest or whatever has not given up on them, so to speak. Is out and about, here's the car's breakdown, and like guides the players back, walking them towards this town. And because they're vampires, they sleep through the day, and then they're up about in the night, and then they integrate and mix with the players of this town, the community, and they kind of get the impression that something's kind of amiss. They're new strangers in this town, they sleep through the day, how they're not interacting with people properly, so already that makes them a bit outcasts and weird. People being nosy and interfering, asking them a load of different questions. They're forced or encouraged to like go to the town meetings and whatever, and that may also seem a bit weird in itself, because they all begin to happen at night, so it's a very close-knit community. Obviously you might have the person who's running it as a ghoul, or maybe the missus is, or whatever, or maybe they're like a thin blood, so they're going to have some level of power within the clique, but also supernaturally as well. So they like have that pedestal above everybody else, but they may be on a similar playing level as you. And if it's like a ghoul who can easily be manipulated by the players, well, that's going to cause some very interesting dynamics when our leader here, our mayor, starts doing things that's out of character and things start to go a bit weird. And the first people that are going to get blamed here are the players. So what sort of vampire would we have running in this sort of place? Well, again, we've got a load of different clans to choose from. And if we move away from 5th edition, you've got a load of bloodlines as well. And of course, it doesn't have to be vampiric, but as we're focusing on Vampire the Masquerade, it would make sense that we include a vampire here. Now, with our little setup here, it might make sense that we have like a Ventru or a La Sombra, you know, because they're very corporate, as it were. La Sombra more so corporate in the 5th edition setting, interact with people and bending the wheels and whatnot. It could be a toy. There's different options here. I don't want to say Nosferatu just because, you know, again, been watching Midnight Mass and, you know, it's kind of a Salem's Lot sort of thing. It's sort of the more horrific nature of vampire. It could be a Salubri. If we're wanting to have something that's all like peaceful, happy clappy, if we stick to the stereotype that the Salubri are all very peaceful of a bloodline. Matthew Dawkins actually did a very interesting look of how he would present the Salubri in 5th edition, which, if I can, I'll leave in a card somewhere or will be in the description below, either which. It's going to be appearing now. And he actually talks about putting the Salubri on a much more sinister tone, which is something I've always loved about them, because, sure, they're very caring and willing, but as vampires, that can become very toxic. And how does one define something is willing to be fed upon? I mean, if we look at the old curse with the Salubri, I'm not obviously looking at the whole third eye bleeding thing. And I think them feeding upon people with consent is still a thing in 5th edition. I don't remember, it's been a while since I've looked at it. Like, how do you define willing? Like, you scratch my back, I scratch yours sort of thing? Grooming? Blackmail? Because in that sense, yeah, you're willing because you don't want to die sort of thing. There are many different ways that you can spin that around. And that could be tied back into religion, like an opening eye scene, the love of God and all that stuff. But we're looking purely at the more town-related stuff here. And maybe a Salubri has built this community in such a way that this kindness has been mutated in and around like these generations of people. And it could be like a set of rules that's on a plaque somewhere, like very archaic, sort of like, these are the rules. And it could be something as, you know, as simple as the way, you know, and you break one of these and like bad things happen, and it's not so much like you get sent to jail, like you're executed, which in America there's some states that allow that, but this execution could take on the form of some sort of weird sacrifice, like, you know, blood altar sort of thing, or guillotine, like something really out there and barbaric, you know, just to present that shock value that this whole town of people have grown up used to this sort of thing, and like to them that's their normal. For the players, for more civilized backgrounds, like this is going to create a nasty shock, and this is going to make people think, okay, something really weird is going on and we need to get out of here. And they go and try and find their car, which is probably being repaired by whatnot, and oh no, the car is in really bad shape and it's now in pieces. It might force the players to try and like fuck off, and that would also create a lot of friction as well. And obviously they'll be in this town to try and work out where this person is, like they would have probably passed through here, this target of interest as it were. But there's lots of different things that you can do here, and another reason why I would want to create something that's very community based rather than like underground hood and robe sort of thing, is that by giving something a name and something that people can latch on to, starts to create a sense of familiarity, and it feeds into the whole element of the fear of the unknown if players can't put a name to it, other than the fact you've got this town of people that follow by a set of rules called the Way, or the Ways, or something like that. Because sure, Cult of the Blood Gods here does have like a load of different like name templates you can choose, like to help you create the cults and their ideas and whatnot. But if you don't have that, if you have it something that's recognisable, but so fucking different and outlandish, then that's frightening, because you can't latch onto that, but you can latch onto it enough to understand what's happening, but not enough to familiarise yourself with that. And it also becomes that frightening for you because you can't relate to it, and everybody knows that, and now you're an outsider. And nobody likes the outsider, so you either get treated differently, you're ostracized, and that creates this whole element of FOMO, like fear of missing out sort of thing, and we're going to have to put all the dogs that are drinking and snoring here. And people, despite our best intentions, don't like truly being lonely. And they don't like being alone. There is a difference here. We may like that every so often, but all the time, and to feel the hate and resentment from people around you that you've grown up with, or even like if you actually, I was thinking like in a work sense, but if you talk about school, like the number of years that you go to school with the same people in your years, like you do grow up with them as well. You meet up with them and you play with them, and we can all think about those times where our friends have wanted to do something foolish and they pick on you because like you're pussy or you don't have the balls or whatever, or you're, stuff like that. Like a common one is like people who start smoking end up doing it in school because their friends are doing it behind a shed. It's like, go on, one won't kill you, and stuff like that. So having that in a community like that could lead to your downfall, and obviously in a game, this will probably end up being the player's downfall, like they're being chased out of town, or people begin to work out that there's something not right with them, that they're monsters or whatever, or somebody has seen them feeding, and you could incorporate that into failed roles, like that you do a feeding role and the players get something wrong, like they fail badly, but the situation, like say if you're stalking somebody in a dark alleyway, right, and there's nobody around, it's just like brick walls either side on you, like, and they're facing the end of a wall or whatever, they're just about to turn around a corner, realise they've gone the wrong way or something, and you feed on them, like, and you're much stronger, more powerful than them, like there is no reason why you should fail that role, or even make them make that role in the first place. But you can make them make the role, and if they fail, you could say that they feed on them, and then just leave it at that. And then make the player worry, hold on, I failed that role, but yet I failed on them. What was that role for exactly? And that might make them begin to worry and think, oh shit, someone followed me. Is there something that I've missed here? And then they do roles about it. And then you can decide on the difficulty in your head on the fly, and have them decide whether they see something or not. If they see something, do they know who it was, or was it like a glimpse and they've gone sort of thing? If it was a person, who are they within the realms of the community? Like, how much power and influence do they have? What would happen if they told somebody? If it was the vampire in question, what does that mean for you? Well, it probably means that it's going to be fed down the line, and it's going to further bleed into the idea that these strangers are nothing but trouble. So those are just some of the ideas that I'm sort of coming up with on the fly as I'm rambling this to you. We kind of got a bit of some semblance of some frame structure here. Prince sends you away, you have a little bit of breakdown, whatever, or you're sent to the place and all the bad shit happens, rather than a little hiccup, as it were. And in this example here, it could result in the players like fucking fleeing. Some players may actually want to take over the town and become its new leaders, sort of things. And there's still also the matter of fact, okay, you haven't found this somebody, and you need to get out. And it could end with them leaving the town, and then the storyteller then can come up the actual mission of finding the person that they're looking for. Or maybe so much time has passed that they've moved on, or they're died, or whatever. Or if there are some connections to them, like somebody's like, oh, such and such is hiding here, and they get rid of them. If this cult town have worked out that they're vampires or whatever, which causes lots of issues further down the line. So we have some semblance of a game here that you can pinch and borrow and use in your own games. And because I haven't written it down, a lot of it's being very rambling and waffly, I do hope that some of what I said has been useful, and I hope that the previous episode of this little mini-series, as it were, this two-parter, has been engaging as well. And I hope that this has encouraged you to try employing cults more into your games. And as something that I highlighted in the previous episode, a lot of people, particularly in the States, have grown up with sort of like these closed-off Christian-based communities, and it's been very traumatic for a lot of people, and I can understand why a lot of people would not want to explore that. But cults can take on different forms. They don't all have to be religious focused, but again, just the connections and whatnot, and what people can and can't wear, don't do, etc. and so forth, can be too much. But there are different ways that a cult can be formed, and there are different ways that you can feed in ideas, providing that everybody's enjoying themselves and having a jolly fun time. So I do encourage, everybody to give ideas of running and playing in cults a lot more, because I feel you can take some really interesting emotions with that and run wild with it. And just certainly build up the pressure and then just have it all explode at the end when shit hits the fan and this society of people begins to fall apart, realising that without like these very rigid ideas, they have no personality left and they have to try and rebuild themselves, and that level of trauma can take years. That's just a horror that I really enjoy. Like, sure, I enjoy like slashes and violence and whatnot, but stuff that really makes people sit and brew and think, what's the deeper message here? What is it trying to say here? What is the storyteller trying to convey with this cult and this idea? There's just a lot. Oh, it's just great. I think you should really give it a go. And if you haven't already, go and buy Cult of the Blood God. It's my favourite Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition book. It's just nearly flawless. Like, it's just a fantastic source for anybody, for any vampire game, and any game in general, I feel. So don't be put off by the fact it's a 5th edition book. Like, you can use this in whatever. It's just a truly magnificent beast of a book. Lovely stuff. Now, if you've gotten to the end of this video, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe if you like some more of this content. Vampire the Masquerade, World of Darkness, and horror related in general. I understand this is a bit different from the usual Lore by Night stuff. Not the usual, like, waffly vloggy stuff, but, you know, I wanted to try something different. In the year of our Lord 2025, which seems weird because I'm recording this in 2024. And in actual fact, this is going to be released in 2024, but this carries on into 2025. I'm waffling. Anyway, I'd appreciate that like and subscribe, and check out the various books in the description below where you can include in your games of Vampire the Masquerade, including Cult of the Blood Gods. And if you purchase them with those links, I get some of the money back because I'm affiliate on DriveThruRPG and the Storyteller's Vault, which allows me to provide more interesting content like this and purchase really awesome books like this and not so cool ones to talk about and educate people and, you know, give off some of my insight. And, you know, produce awesome, cool things for you, which is always a lot of fun. But I can understand that times are hard and whatnot, and that may not be something you may be financially able to do. So, that doesn't matter. So what you can do to help all the same is to like and subscribe and share this with all your friends, family, and Aunt Bertha's mountain chicken. And I'll see you on the next upload, whatever that may well be for you. And until next time, farewell.